Hi everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, from whichever part of the world you are joining. This is another session in the series of Azure Partner Fest we are doing today. Go to the next slide. So some of you would have joined in past. We have done 2 sessions already, and this is third session. Today we are going to talk about Skytap. And in case you want to, there are a few more partners which are lined up. And if you are keen to attend, learn about those partner solutions running on Azure, you can scan the code and register yourself so that you can get notified. At the same time, you also get links to join that sessions. Some housekeeping rules. So these sessions are recorded and will be available on demand basis. We have a dedicated channel on YouTube for Microsoft APAC. After a while, these sessions will be also uploaded over there. If in case during the session you have any questions, you can go to the Q&A panel on the chat window. You can post it there, your questions. We will have 10 minutes dedicated to answer your questions, queries towards the end of sessions. So we will be just rest assured the questions will be addressed. And attendees may watch live events and they may be allowed to participate also. Just want to ensure don't share your audio and video in a Q&A. So with that, I want to introduce about today's focus partner, Skytap. This is quite interesting topic in itself because if you are dealing with IBM Power workloads, the migration and the modernization of those workloads is slightly challenging, and solutions like Skytap make it quite easy and seamless to move those workloads to the Azure. So we have presenters from Skytap itself, James Wong and Jailen Bone, who will be presenting the solution. Along with that, we will have a Chikyong, who is from Microsoft Malaysia, and they all will be taking us through the offering of Skytap. How does it work? How do you use this? And what all value added benefit it brings to the table? With that, I hand it over to Chikyong.
Thank you, Akash. So even before we start, I would like to express my gratitude for having both James and Dylan. They are from Skytap to join us for today's session. So together we have worked on many of the customer use case that allows our customer to move their mission critical legacy workloads like Silver Lake Integrated Banking System, SIPS, to Skytap on Azure. So thanks Akash for the introduction. My name is Chikyong. I'm a cloud solution architect and I'm part of the customer success organization in Microsoft. And my role is to help customer in their cloud adoption journey and achieve business goals using Microsoft Azure. And based on our conversation with many customers throughout this region, cloud adoption or cloud migration is no longer a good to have option, but instead it has become a very important enabler for their business in terms of improving, agility, time to market, scalability, and reliability of their systems. So, however, in many cloud migration projects that we are involved in, we also observe that legacy applications, including many of those running on IBM Power, are the hardest to move. And often they are left behind in their on-premise data center because it's not designed to run in cloud. So for them, re-architecting or re-platform is not really an option that they will consider due to the complexity and also the large amount of code that needs to be rewritten. So here comes Skytap with their solution and also with their tagline to give your traditional system a new life on Azure. So Skytap on Azure enables your IBM Power and also x86 workloads to run natively in the cloud without rewriting, refactoring, or replatforming. So this means your organization can now take advantage of the full power of cloud, including on-demand self-service provisioning, scalability, and high availability. It also allows you to natively integrate to all the other Azure services in Azure, including like Azure Synapse, AIML, and also Azure SQL. So with Skytap, it helps your company to offload your team from managing the physical infrastructure and also save your team from the expense of adding hardware on-premise. So as with Skytap on Azure, your business critical application is running on the latest IBM Power hardware, fully managed by Microsoft. So now, without further ado, I shall hand it over to my colleague from Skytap, James, to kick off his presentation, and then followed up by Dylan for a live demo. So over to you, James.
Hey, thanks. Thank you, Chikyo, and thank you, Akash. And I guess first of all, thank you for having us today. And the whatever that Chikyo has kind of summarized it is in a nutshell exactly what we're trying to achieve and solve for the market today. Next. So just a little bit more elaboration on what Chikyo has kind of mentioned. So when we look at the entire market reality of the adoption of the IBM Power and those kind of stuff, right? So we do recognize the fact that a lot of industry, like for example the FSI industry, the manufacturing, the supply chain, the retail, many of them actually run their core business application on the IBM Power platform. So whether it be AS400 or ARX, for all the right reasons, because the IBM Power platform has been a very robust platform, right? But also at the same time, we also do recognize the fact that customers, as they start to keep up with the front end business demands, and they need to have a much more better way in terms of managing the back-end infrastructure. That creates a lot more complexity as we talk about, frame refresh, hardware refresh, DC as it, that kind of stuff. And then people start to understand what cloud is about. That's where people start to look at, putting their front-end x86 virtualized platform on cloud. People start to recognize the benefit of a cloud operating model because you talk about agility and flexibility. And then naturally the question comes, okay, so I've got this bunch of IBM Power stuff. Am I able to push them into a cloud operating model? The answer is yes and no. But many a times we do see the fact that because of all this legacy application, there is a lot of cost and consideration to be made. Next. There's a lot of cost and consideration to be made, right? Because some of these applications are written in RPG, written in COBOL, heavy customization. There's no an easy way to actually talk about replatform or refactor in that manner. So how do we, from a Microsoft and Skytap perspective, how do we address this particular problem statement? Next. So we look at a fundamental 4-step approach. Now, naturally, the very first base step is to have the least risky motion of all, which is to be able to migrate as it is, okay? Which means that you literally have the ability to lift and shift your on-prem AS400 or ARX workload and move them into the cloud. Now, once you're already in the cloud, that opens up a whole new world of possibility. That's where we talk about extension of services. So when we talk about extension of services, we look at possible automation. We also talk about possible integration of the native Azure services for your legacy workload. And last but not least, you have the ability to do any form of refactor, replatform of your application. Should you want to do that, right? At least right now, customers have the ability to. The customer have the ability to do it at their own pace and not being constrained by the timeline of hardware refreshes, etc. Next. So Skytap on Azure, where does Skytap on Azure fits in? Skytap on Azure fits in is to really help customers to have the first two, I would say, fundamental baby steps to really have the ability to migrate as it is, and also at the same time to extend some of these services. Next. And that's where we talk about this entire solution, right? So Microsoft has a global, I would say a global corporate direction to really talk about a program which is called Mainframe and Mid-Range Modernization Program. And that's where Microsoft actually invested in a whole bunch of IBM Power infrastructure and put them inside the Azure data center. At the same time, Skytap by itself is the orchestration layer that allows customers to manage VMs and LPAR. So when you kind of integrate that together, that basically allows customers to so-called lift and shift their on-prem workloads and run them inside a cloud operating model without the need for any form of refactor or replatform of those applications. Next. So we are probably live in maybe say about 7 or 8 regions globally. Over here in Asia Pac, we're live in Singapore, we're live in Hong Kong. We should be opening up a new live region very soon. Yet to be disclosed, but we will have another third region in Asia Pac very soon. Next. Now, when you look at the whole entire architecture itself, is pretty straightforward in that manner, because when you look at the big box that depicts a Microsoft Azure DC or AZ zone, right? And as you can see, the Skytap on Azure is basically a dedicated environment sitting side by side with the native Azure services. Now, this brings a lot more benefits, especially when customers start to push their front-end web applications in the native Azure side. And generally, this application usually require read-write access to their main databases or their main core application sitting inside the Power system. Having them inside the same environment actually increases a lot more availability and performance in that manner. Now, remember just now I kind of talked about possible extension of services. So a classic example is when we look at backup, for example. In an on-prem scenario, customers usually do physical tape backup for their Power system. But however, by moving into the cloud, customers no longer have the conversation about physical tape backup anymore. And in fact, those customers who are possibly in the FSI industry, especially where they have a requirement for, I think it's a 7 years long-term archival retention, that kind of stuff. Customers right now has the ability to utilize the Azure Block Storage for all the right reasons. Okay, next. Now, to really kind of expand a lot more on the native Azure services integration, so rightfully as what Chika just kind of mentioned, so especially when we talk about data analytics, right? So customers right now has the ability to unlock their existing AS400 libraries and AIX libraries, together with the x86 libraries, to really kind of utilize Azure Synapse as a tool, collectively as a single UI, to really kind of trim through all these statistics and analytics for their front-end business needs. Next. I want to touch a little bit on the use case. So generally, as per any kind of cloud adoption, we will never encourage customers to go in with a big bang. Generally, customers usually move in from the dev test angle. We do see customers running certain POCs, and then once the POC is successful, their environment that they turn up in cloud automatically can become their UAT and SIT environment. The very next favorite use case is, of course, DR, right? So the concept about running DR on the cloud is a no-brainer. So basically, customers have a lot more flexibility by running DR on the cloud. So in an on-prem scenario, they possibly need to maintain 2 pieces of hardware of equal sizes, and then at the same time, customers don't generally exercise DR every single time, probably once a year, twice a year. So customers right now has the ability to set a DR on the cloud and then maybe run it as a bit lower baseline in terms of compute resources. And when DR exercise kicks in, with a simple click of the button, they can actually ramp up the necessary resources to meet the production demand. And once they're done, they can easily ramp it back down. Last but not least, we are also not denying the fact that customers can also run production environment on the cloud as well. Next. So this is a typical RACI chart for cloud adoption, right? So what it basically means is that all of the OS layer down, all of the hardware, all the switching, cabling, and all those kind of stuff has been taken away. So it's all undertaken by the responsibility of both Skytap and Microsoft. Where the customers right now can really kind of concentrate on is to really kind of add a lot more value back to the business by managing their data, the application, the OS, the network security. And remember, just now I kind of talked about extension of services. So one of the key things, other than extending into the native Azure services, within the tool itself, within the Skytap platform, there's also OpenREST API with the likes of Terraform and Ansible. So we do have customers who can use Terraform script to kind of do autonomous provisioning, literally from day 0 to day 2 provisioning, to really kind of keep up with the demands. At the same time, in the AS4, I would call it the IBM Power world, right? There's a whole new ecosystem of technology partners, because a lot of them using live replication technology or using backup technology with the likes of Mimix, Pexava, Robot HA. So all of these existing replication technologies that the customers are using today on-prem can easily be portable onto the cloud with no change on the architecture at all. Next. Now, This is a favorite question whereby, customer tend to ask, what makes it so different, right? I'm running my AS400 AIX on-prem today, and then I'm going to run AS400 AIX on the cloud. What exactly is different? Now, to really kind of summarize it all, I think fundamentally when we look at cloud adoption, it's not just about the technology that you're adopting. I think it's a lot to do with the process change and mentality change as well. Now, if someone were to ask me whether if they're going to run their AS400 on the cloud, does it mean that I don't need to manage that green screen anymore? The answer is no. You will still require the skill set to manage that green screen. The key difference about running the operation on cloud is to actually simplify and make things a lot more efficient from an end-to-end standpoint. I'll give you a classic example, and you will see a lot more examples in the demo that Dylan's going to show later. But one of the key examples is automation, inbuilt automation tool. Like for example, VM sequencing. In a typical scenario, when we talk about an environment, there's generally a few LPARs, there's possible 1 or 2 x86 machines. Each of these VMs runs different kind of function. In an on-prem world, you probably go to the compute team, the network team, the storage team to really kind of gain all these resources. And then after that, you get your administrator fire up manually on those environments. However, in a cloud world, you can predefine how your environment is going to look like. And with a simple click of the button, your entire environment is going to fire up for you automatically within 30 seconds. So this is a classic example of what do we mean by simplifying operations and make things more efficient. Next. So really in summary about Skytap on Azure, right? So first of all, we are not changing the application. We are not changing the infrastructure choice for the right reasons. What we basically allow customers to do is that forget about the nuance about hardware refresh and all this kind of stuff. At the end of the day, the customer only need to care about what kind of resources do they require. And that's basically a cloud operating model to really kind of gain a lot more agility and flexibility in that sense. And obviously by sitting within Microsoft Azure, the customer gain a lot more value stack as they start to integrate some of these native Azure services onto their legacy workload. And last but not least, that will be a key fundamental step towards the customer's IT and digital transformation journey. With that, I'll hand it off to Dylan for the demo.
Sure, let me share my screen. Hello, everyone. So, pretty much just like what James shared, right? So Skytap makes it super easy for you to provision your legacy application. In this case, your IBM AS400, right? Your AIX, you can run those in Skytap on Azure. So it's pretty much part of the entire Azure data center, Azure construct, right? That we're trying to get this to run together. Okay. So as you can see from this itself, right, this particular screen, I believe you can see that. So from here, you can see Skytap pretty much reside within Azure, and it reside within Azure Marketplace itself. You to just get to Marketplace, and you can search for Skytap. Okay, you get to access to Skytap, and from here you see that we have all this environment ready for you to consume right now, as of now. Okay, we have production and non-production customer running in both Singapore and Hong Kong and across multiple regions in the entire global presence as well. Okay, let's choose Singapore, for example. Once you choose Singapore, you can subscribe and going through some criteria, filling up some of your informations about the subscription that you want to use for. Once you're ready, you pretty much redirect to Skytap dashboard. Okay. As you can see from this portal itself, the portal pretty much is different from standard Azure native portal, but it pretty much performs the same thing, right? You can do a shutdown, a boot up, power up the entire environments. As you can see on the left, you can run some trainings and learn some how to use Skytap. And on the left bottom, you can see I have an AS400 environment running. So with this, you can which I will show you how you can actually run AS400 and AIX in Skytap as well. On the right, you can see some usage of the month by your administrator. You can see your team usage as well. Okay, so let's quickly take a look at the AS400 environment. Okay, I take this as a very good demo to share with you guys. Not only you can run AS400 in Skytap. Of course, that's the whole idea about running what do you have on-prem, but you're able to run it in Skytap. But you're able to run it side by side with AIX. And in this case, we have a 5250, which in this case is a emulator, right, to access to the AS400. It's pretty much used by all the terminal bankings, desktops that they use to connect to the AS400. At the same time, we can also simulate the entire strategy about using Convo or using any sort of backup like BRMS ICC to back up the environment. Okay, so before I move into the actual looking at the console, going through the details, I just want to let you know that if you can see there's an AS400 environment here. When we, in Skytap, we use a lot of terms when you use environments, right? It consists of the Alpa, the VMs, it consists of the networks. As you can see, there's IP address assigned to each of them. So, okay, you also can attach to a specific WAN. And you can also apply certain automations like booting up which to be boot up first, or you can apply scheduling auto shutdowns to whichever VM that you want it to be run 9x5. That's the whole idea, right? You're no longer bound by having purchase of actual physical hardware and run 24/7. In many cases, we have seen customer who actually run 9x5 for development workload, UAT workload, instead of running 24/7. Okay. So let's quickly take a look at the AS400. You guys will be, I believe those who are more in the legacy operating system has exposed, who have very familiar with this green screen. So I'm about to access to the green screen by keying the password. Yes, I just accessed to a very traditional but yet live and kicking banking operations, and many other manufacturing are using the AS400s. Okay, as you can see, this is typically how an AS400 user access to the screen, right? From there, they can perform work, act, job, which is a pretty much very standard command. But you notice one thing in this screen is that this particular screen, especially those who are running AS400, know that you are running ADSP01 over here, which is under the second line, which means you can actually perform a restricted state, perform end subsystem, all those tasks using this console itself. This console is actually a HMC console. Okay, but actually everything is fired up and powered by API. There's no man in the middle. Yeah, that's the whole idea about running on Skytap, right? You can get the same state of using it, but everything is powered through orchestration and automation. Okay, let me quickly switch the screen to AIX, which is the same thing. I know there's a bunch of AIX users out there who are trying to move out from their data center as well. In this case, you can log into your AIX. Yeah, so this is, I just did an AIX log on, right? So this is a typical standard AIX where you run SMIDI, okay? Or you can run, in this case, you can run Topaz as well, which you can look at the live informations about your CPU, Topaz data that you can collect as well if you want to. Okay, that's the whole idea about running legacy environment in Skytap, but that is only part of the entire innovations that we provide in the form of cloud native for a legacy platform, you see. Okay, maybe let me quickly switch to the 5250 as well, because there's a lot of banking users are going to access 5250. For example, to access to the AS400. So this is to emulate, they are actually at their banking teller stations. They are going through a 5250 connections to the AS400. This is, we have seen many banking customers using this process to connect to. And most of the time they can use VPN or ExpressRoute to connect to Skytap and Azure easily. Right? Yeah, so yeah, this is the way. I believe there are some questions about backup and migrations, which I'll bring this shortly, but I don't think I can cover the wide aspects of Spectrum about what can be done for backup because there's a lot of options on the table. But let me just quickly share with you a few functions that you can quickly bring, especially for AIX, right? With a VM import function, you can actually bring your VMs, in this case, even an AIX VM using a VM imports method, which is very similar to VMware, the OVA, OVF styles. By bringing in the entire system state going to stay the same, right? But for AS400, yes, you need to perform some level of option 21, option 22 or 23, whichever option, or you can even integrate solutions like Commvault or BRMS for them to work closely in terms of backup and recovery into Skytap as well. Okay, maybe let's quickly go in. I know some of the customer may face issue about migrating to a cloud environment. One of the reason is when they purchase the hardware, they need an LPAR. It probably take them weeks or months, right? But in this case, if you want to run an LPAR, maybe let's provision an LPAR together, okay? Let's say today you need a V7R3 AS400 LPAR, okay? And you can just click create environment. And I know on-prem probably you need to order hardware, get the storage guy to attach the server to the storage, and get the network guy to attach the networks and etc. Right? Usually involve weeks or months kind of process. In this case, this is how fast you are getting AS400, which is taking about 30 to 40 seconds, which is definitely less than a minute, and you can just get this AS400 running in Skytap. I can of course power this up. It's currently running on 2 gig RAM, 128 gig of storage, but I'm definitely not happy with this. And in Skytap, there's nothing like t-shirt size. You can customize everything to your likings. In this case, I can just change the RAM. Let me change the RAM to 16 gig RAM, for example, and you can see the corresponding CPW will increase. This is very much an AS400 value, just like similar to SAP has SAP's value. Yeah, IBM has CPW value, and you can change the entitled capacity. So one of the things about Skytap is you're no longer bound by hardware by purchasing the entire core, right? Now you have a chance that let's say you want to leverage on power feature like uncapped, right? By running uncapped, you can burst beyond whatever you've been entitled to. And in this case, you can burst beyond to 1 core if you need to, but you only subscribe at the minimum. In this case, I probably subscribe 0.2, right? So in Skytap, you have the option to pay fractional of IBMI licensing value. Okay, that's one of the reasons many customers find that this thing makes a lot of sense, especially I'm running for DR. Okay, I can run at much lower pace during Mimix replications. But let's say during DR, maybe I increase it to a higher value. So in that case, it makes more sense when actual DR activated, more user are accessing it. These are the flexibility of using cloud native. As you can see, all the provisioning, adding, everything is through a cloud UI orchestration provisionings, right? And you can actually do all this process through a form of API as well. That's the beauty, right? So maybe just let me add a couple of these. I just want to add a 1 terabyte disk. I know storage tends to be a very much and resource crunch over the years as well. Okay, in this case, you can just easily add whatever storage you want, and from there you can just add it to your system and easily calculate. And we're trying to bring all the API, all the features. We used to be a push of a button to all is clickable options kind of thing, like DSD. For those in AS400 will know the DSD and SSD kind of thing. Okay, so far what we cover. We cover provisioning AS400, and one thing about you could be running this AS400 for weeks and you decided this is not a project that you want to go for, you can just delete, right? I know if you're coming from hyperscaler world, this is like no-brainer. It's pretty easy for you to delete, right? But if you're from the legacy AS400 AIX world, right, you know that actually buying a hardware and running in your data center to get that removed from your asset, removed from your data center, the power, cooling, costing, racks, etc. It can sometimes be a pain. And now you have the same feature to the hyperscaler can bring it to your AS400, your legacy as well. Make sense? So maybe just give me a few minutes to cover a few more points, especially what we cover so far, still very much within the aspect and context of lift and shift, you see. So we lift from your on-prem to Skytap, you get it run efficiently, you can power on, you can schedule power off. All these are still very much efficiency. I'm about to share with you two features. One of them is called live clone. So I'm about to perform a live clone right now. I can use this for new development, or I can use it for batch processing. I prefer to run it live. So in this case, I'm performing a live clone at my current AS400 environment, which is running just now. And this is running on file. I can actually copy it to another region as well. Maybe from Singapore, I can copy it to Hong Kong and vice versa if I want to as well. There's a whole perspective, right? If you want to run for DR, but you doesn't want to keep a set of asset for that, right? And you manage to keep the kind of longer RPO, RTO, and it makes a lot of sense to you have a cold DR. In this case, you can just copy across. This is how fast I just make a live clone, you see. That's why a lot of banking customers find this is a very good feature for them to run a parallel batch processing. It doesn't need to affect their current production, which is running for their serving their users, right? The multiple banking users are using it. So they don't want to interrupt their operation or cause any performance from that aspect. They make a clone out of it. And from here, you can run your batch processing, backup any operation. Once that is done, you can just delete this if you want to. For this case, I've just finished my batch operation. I'm going to delete this, okay? And this is the much that you are paying for, right? Once you delete, poof, is gone. You no longer need to pay for it. Okay. So one more feature I want to share with you guys. This, yeah, of course, there's more feature to share, but in this case, these are the few key features that are very useful, especially running AIX patch management, or you're running AS400 PTF. You can actually select your LPAR that you want, and you just perform a template. Right now, actually, I'm going to perform a template. Okay, means it's not deploy as a LPAR, but it perform a snapshot of the environments, right? Once that is done, so okay, once this process is done, I can keep this. You see, if today you want to perform a patch, especially on AS1 or AIX, right? When was the last RPO that you have? It probably 8 hours or 12 hours ago, which is your backup, your nighttime backup, right? But in this case, you have seconds ago. You just completed the templates. In this case, you will go to your templates. You'll find that I have a templates which I'm just performed a few seconds ago. See? So from here, I can, if somehow my upgrade doesn't successful, I can just easily revert back to this template, which is totally identical with what I have. So these are the typical feature and functionality you can use, on top of the standard day-to-day functions, which lift and shift, most of the provider maybe can cover certain aspect of it, but these are beyond that, okay? And even further, you can actually, like I mentioned earlier, you can use API to power this snapshot. I have a customer find very interesting that they actually perform a snapshot every 1 hour. So I've actually, in this case, I have a RPO of 1 hour. Instead of I'm keeping a HA, in this case, I have a snapshot of 1 hour ago. If anything went wrong, I just revert an hour ago. Yeah, it may not be the HA level of HA, but it's still good enough to have an RPO of 1 hour instead of activating a DR. Okay, these are the feature and functionality you can perform using Skytap. Okay. I believe you guys will continue to ask questions across the Q&A.
Yep. So there is a couple of questions in the Q&A.
Sure.
Shall we go through them?
Yeah. Okay. Great. Sure. Yeah. I'm not eyeing on the Q&A question, but we can go through now. Yeah, I believe there's a question about option 21. Yes, you can
Yep.
perform option 21 in Skytap, which is very similar because it's actually underlying architecture is still based on Power, right? You can perform totally identical steps. Just need to take note that in this case, there's no physical materials that you're able to use in this case. Most of the organizations start to foregoing the entire idea of holding a physical tapes. They move into the virtual world using virtual tapes as a way. And in this case, you can totally leverage on Azure Blob Storage as a method to backing up your environment, be it your BRMS or even in the AIX world of names, you can still back it up to Azure Blob Storage as well. Of course, and at the same time, you can leverage on solutions like third party like Commvault and etc. to perform those backup. Okay. I believe there's some questions about migration, which I cover the imports. For the IBMI, you are using the typical backup and restore method, and typically in Skytap we support V7, R2, R3, R4 for AS400, and typically we run AIX version 6.1, 7.1, 7.2 as well in Skytap. We have 7.3 AIX in Skytap as well.
Thanks, Dylan.
Okay.
So there is a question from Matthew. His question is, how do you handle older on-premise IBM OS versions that do not run on the hardware that was acquired to run in Azure?
Yeah. So the whole idea is that in Skytap and Azure, we run these are the versions, right? We know that there are companies out there who are running an older version than the standard IBMI version, which is 7.2, 7.3, 7.4, right? We do see that chances that they may need to do upgrades, but we see many cases that customers who, for example, V7 R3 is actually end of support and end of life in the context of IBM, but you still can run in Skytap, you see, and we doesn't restrict customer running it on Skytap as long as you are aware about the risk, right? Just like similar to our x86 platform. I know most hyperscaler out there doesn't support Windows 2003, right? But you can actually run Windows 2003 in Skytap as long as you're aware about the risk and the limited supportability of it. Yeah. That's all context.
Thanks, Dylan.
Sure.
There's another question from Matthew O'Brien as well.
Sure.
What about IBM licensed program products? What are
Sure.
included, and can the user migrate their own license if required?
I believe my screen is still sharing, right? Correct?
No, now it's changed to the Q&A screen.
I see. So yeah, so maybe just to bring this through, because yeah, we can involve into more detailed discussion with each partner or customer directly, but the entire stack of standard IBMI LPP, yes, you can run it in Skytap, which is totally identical. But in Skytap, we have more than a standard IBMI LPP, right? We included those option to purchase on-prem into our standard LPP products as well. For example, like BRMS, Performance Tool, Advanced Scheduler. These are usually paid item, paid optional to purchase, paid in typical on-prem world. But in Skytap, you can use it at unlimited basis as long as you are using those LPP. Okay.
So I think this is the last question for you, Dylan, and also James.
A few more questions, CK.
Right.
I think somebody asked question around the replication supported on Skytap. If you can share what kind of a replication supported for Skytap?
Sure. First and foremost, I want to elaborate a little bit from the entire construct of Skytap offering. Skytap offer as an infrastructure as a service with multi-region supportability, right? We have customers right now running production in DR across Singapore and Hong Kong, but in many cases they are using their own replication solution. Let's take an example. Oracle has a solution called Oracle Data Guard. You can actually use this Data Guard, which is a native Oracle database options, right, which is part of the license that you can use it to replicate from production and DR between Singapore and Hong Kong. And in AS400 perspective, there's a lot of customer using Mimics as a replication solution between production and DR, Singapore and Hong Kong as well. Yeah. Typically, this will involve some third-party solutions for this to work, but in Skytap, we are offering the platform for them to actually get it connected and get it start replicating to each other. Okay.
Okay, there is a question about how the PVU licensing model works in Skytap. Also, does this support Oracle RAC?
Very good question about the PVU. So in Skytap, we doesn't really cover much context of PVU because we are getting an unlimited license for all the operating system IBM I levels as well as the AIX, right? I believe some customer may still look for certain PVU for IBM related software, for example, WebSphere and so. Yeah, they can definitely bring their own license to Skytap. But in terms of the PVU, in this case, they may need to align to the processor levels in Skytap and the socket level in Skytap. I believe we can further discuss this with the actual customer or vendor respectively separately, okay? Because this is very much varies between applications to applications. Chicken, just now you mentioned there's another questions.
Yep.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, so this is another question. So also from Matthew.
Sure.
So his question is, what software tier is the environment? This can impact the customer cost for third-party software. So I think this is.
I'll cover that during. Maybe we should have a session with Matthew to cover more detail into our current platform. What are the tiers that the customer need to run and they can run in Skytap as well? Yeah, because these are typically subject to each and applications. But in terms of Skytap, we are running for AS1 and IBM and AIX. We are running unlimited license. For example, you want your access ACS, right? For example, you have AS100 in Skytap. You have thousands or hundreds of your user using bank teller. They can access to Skytap unlimited on an unlimited basis. Okay.
There's one question people want to know, like and I think this is a common scenario. What's the typical migration process if application needs to move from on-premise to Skytap? Because
I think there are two very unique, very standard migration scenario that we actually draft out and put as a Microsoft Docs, which I'm about to paste it here if I can. Okay, let me see. So this is typically for IBMI, and there's another one. These are very good reference material for you to know the breadth and expand about possibility that you can work for, but we can actually work more than all these migration scenario as well. But it's good to use this as a reference point. Can you see the one I just pasted and said?
Yep.
Chicken?
Yep. We can see you have shared the link, so it should be visible to all the participants as well. Yep.
Great. Great to know that. Any more questions?
Let me check. I think there's no more question from the audience. Thank you so much, Dylan, for your comprehensive and detailed demo, and also answering all the questions as well. And also thank you for all the participants who have raised all these questions. That is really great to see. So now I will pass it back to Akash for us to close the session.
Yeah, thank you, Skytap team and everybody. It has been a great session, and the demo was like it really shows how best we can utilize Skytap on Azure and how natively it is integrated inside Azure. So with that, like, we would love your feedback. So you can scan the QR code and let us know how was the session. We want to improvise if in case there are areas where you think we should have more focus. So feedback is utmost important and valuable for us. The another QR code is basically will help you to navigate you to the direct YouTube channel where we put all those session videos it is, as I mentioned during the start of session, we have a dedicated Microsoft APAC YouTube channel where we are putting all these Partner Fest sessions recording so that you can review and access those whenever you want. Slide. Yeah. So today's session was the third session in the series of Partner Fest. Next week, we are bringing HashiCorp, who will be taking us through their offering on Azure. And we have a few more partners lined up like Castan, Confluent, Informatica. You can still register register for those sessions and attend those. So feel free to join these sessions as well as share with your colleagues, friends who are interested in learning about Skytap, HashiCorp, Castan, Confluent, and all those unique partners who has a unique offering related to Azure. With that, we are coming to the end of today's session. Thank you very much for your participations and all the questions you have asked during the session. Thank you, Skytap team, for answering those questions with detailed information and taking us through the live demo. We really saw the value of Skytap running on Azure. How does it help like transforming customer who is running on-premise, moving to the cloud and taking the full advantage of cloud benefits. See you next Thursday again for the next series of Partner Fest.